Hi there. This is Nissa from Magic of Paws, and just as I went live, I got an error message. So we'll just deal with it. Hope it's working. We'll find out. Oh, technology. Gotta love it. Anyway, give me error messages. I know it's working on YouTube, so we'll go with YouTube. Anyway, hi, welcome. I wanted to talk to you guys today about uh, 5 common myths that I encounter about anxious dogs. If you're watching, say hi. Let me know where you're watching from, who you're watching with, aka who are your animals. And if you're watching on the replay, let me know that as well. I always like to see who comes to see this on the replay. Anyway, I'm sorry for the hot mess that is my office. I'm sorry for the hot mess that is me. It's been a crazy few weeks here at Magic of Paws, and I somehow still managed to put together a new program with a launch, and I don't know how. Anyway, thank you for joining me. So let's just dive right on in. I've got some myths, and I went through my archive of videos to try and find different examples. So some of these videos are going to be varying qualities, some are going to be portrait, some landscape, but you'll get the point. So sorry for the lack of cohesive production value, but as I've mentioned, it's been a crazy couple weeks. If you can't tell by the fact that I'm eating Scooby snacks for lunch, and it is 4. So Leonard, anyway, let's dive right in. Myth number 1, anxious dogs are always aggressive. Now, I will not lie to you and say that no anxious dogs are ever aggressive. There certainly are some who can be, but it is not a universal about all anxious dogs. It's not a universal about all anxious dogs always. I have personally have a dog that is anxious and has been known to bite. I won't say that he's aggressive because there's not that. Um, he doesn't try to bite. He lashes out in fear. So I don't even think aggressive is really the right term for any fearful dog. But in case you don't believe me, that anxious dogs can switch from being, you know, that anxious dogs can be perfectly friendly. Here, come on.
Good time, buddy?
The best.
You say you're working 2 days?
Yep. Yep. Earning his keep.
So Marshall came to us with quite a bit of anxiety. He had actually did bite his foster prior to coming to us. And not because he was aggressive, but because he and the resident dog just did not get along. They had a little scuffle. She broke it up. He redirected. We're not even sure if it was him or the other dog that bit, but he got the blame. But as you can see from that clip, Marshall is now one of the least aggressive dogs out there. I wish I could share all of the videos and clips I have of Marshall being friendly. I even have pictures of him from just yesterday hanging out with some kids with his new family. So anxious dogs are not always aggressive. And even the ones that show aggressive behavior, I would argue, are more fearful than truly aggressive. It's a fine line, like some people would argue semantics, but it's an important distinction to make in my book. So myth number 2, only rescue dogs can be anxious. I get that. People think that it's a traumatic experience that causes anxiety in dogs. That's the most common thing that we see. We do see a lot of rescue dogs with anxiety, but I have seen my fair share of dogs who come straight from the breeder who also have anxiety. And I don't have a ton of great videos of those particular dogs. I do So you can see in this one, the lip licks, the eyes, the fact that you can see all these treats that he had not taken. He was a dog from a breeder, went straight to his owners at a puppy, and still not all that happy about being around strange people. So it's not always rescue dogs. There's a big misconception that a dog requires trauma in order to develop anxiety. That is probably the more common thing, the thing that we see the most often, but it is not a universal rule. You can also have anxiety in dogs because of the conditions that the mother was in while they were pregnant. Genetic predisposition, methylation of different certain genes, which is epigenetics for those of you who are my science nerds. You can also sometimes see it for dogs that have been just ill at some point in their life, not necessarily abandoned. So there's a whole bunch of varieties of what can cause anxiety. It's not all being abandoned or going through being a rescue dog, though that is fairly common. It's not the only ones. Medication is the only solution for anxious dogs. So this is a hard one to come up with a video to combat, but I would tell you that no, there's a lot of ways to deal with anxiety in dogs. And honestly, medication isn't the first thing that I go to. Usually, what I do with people is I set up a bunch of different uh, changes to their environment, routine, uh, and working on teaching some basic coping skills. If that's not working, then we reach out to the vet for medication recommendation, but it's not even close to every dog that I work with. And I have seen plenty of dogs make great recoveries without medication. One of the videos that I'm about to show you is of a dog that is self-soothing. This is Boomer, who, full disclosure, was on medication early on in his training journey. But in his case, it was more to deal with his neurological condition than his actual anxiety level. Those of you who don't know, Boomer is my dog who has a traumatic brain injury. So you can kind of see it in this video that he doesn't walk right. He can't see very well. So he's kind of a weird dog. And honestly, he was only on medication for a couple of months and he weaned right off of it and did a lot better off of the medication than he did on, which is part of why we stopped. But here is a video of him self-soothing after he and his sister got into a little bit of a spat. Not his fault. Wish was being a piggly wiggly and wanted to steal his food. So they had their little scuffle, broke apart, and then to help self-soothe himself, he knocked his bowl over and made himself a little scatter feed. So how that helps to self-soothe him is it activates a different part of his brain when he gets into that deep sniffing, which is why if you're a client of mine, you will have heard me mention doing scatter feedings, using snuffle mats, puzzle feeders, those sort of things. When the dog gets into a really deep state of sniffing, it actually causes a chemical cascade in their brain of feel-good chemicals, helps them to relax. It also helps their brain to make new connections so that they can process more information. So if a dog is getting overstimulated, if we can get them to sniff, it helps prevent that overstimulation in the future. And Boomer, this particular case for Boomer, he was doing it to help himself calm down. He was doing it to get that cascade of feel-good chemicals going through his brain and through his body so that he could relax at the end of the evening after having a little spat with his sister. Again, not his fault. He's so good. Myth 4, punishment will help anxious dogs get over their fears. I don't even know why people think this works. Are you less scared when somebody's yelling at you or hurting you? I don't understand why people even think that this is a real thing, but apparently people do. So I wanted to show a video if I can get it to work. This one's a little bit bigger, so it likes to fight me.
Yes.
There it is. So
Yes.
this is Ralph, and we are doing some basic, very, very basic pattern games to help him to relax and to calm down. Because he and his brother both have a lot of anxiety. But by doing these simple little pattern games of sitting and looking at me, then running away to get the treat, coming back, sitting, looking at me, running away to get the treat, it helps to teach him to calm down, to relax without any punishment. I'm not even raising my voice at him. I'm not doing anything. I'm barely even telling him what to do. I'm waiting for him to offer up this particular behavior. His brother is on the other side of that wall. That's why I'm tossing treats behind me. It's because his brother is relaxing on the other side while he is doing a pattern game. So I'm working two dogs at once, but doing both without raising my voice, without touching them, without any scaring them, any fearfulness, any punishment of any sort, anything adverse. We're just using cookies and love and some sitting games. And it's all pretty straightforward.
Yes.
What are you doing in there? Good job.
Yes. All done. All done.
For now. We only worked for a couple of minutes. That whole clip is the whole clip of that particular session. And that's as much work as I tend to do with any individual dog. As dogs get better, I tend to work a little bit longer. But in that particular case, Ralph is a puppy. He, I think in that video, was 5 months old. So I can't do any long endurance training sessions with him. And honestly, even the longest training sessions that I do with a dog are generally no more than 15 minutes, just because, especially when we're dealing with anxious dogs, I want to make sure that their body is nice and calm and relaxed. And that's really hard to do if you've been amping them up with treats and excitement for a long period of time. So we tend to do, even when I do training sessions, I tend to ramp them up. So I start off easy, get a little bit more intense, and then slowly bring them back down with simple games. You didn't see that in that particular video because it was just a simple game beginning to end. But in some of my more complex trainings that I do, I'll start off with just some basic sits, move up to a more complicated or more exciting and drivey behavior, bringing it back down to some basic sits. One example of that is Dr. Karen Overall's protocol for relaxation, which I just popped in the comments if you are interested. It is a training protocol that uses that same idea of starting off easy, getting a little bit more complicated, a little bit more intense, and then going back down to something easy. Warm up, cool down, just like any exercise routines that you might do. So that's really helpful for some people. It certainly does not hurt to do that training protocol if you're at all interested in that. I wish I could say I developed it, but it was actually developed when I was 8 years old. But it still obviously still works, or we wouldn't still use it. So that's there for you if you are at all interested. And let's dive into myth number 5. Anxious dogs will never overcome their anxiety. There are some dogs, I'm not going to lie, there are some dogs who will just by default be a little bit more on the anxious end of the spectrum than other dogs. Boomer is one of those dogs. That's why Boomer is not the video clip that I have picked for this. He will always be a little bit more on edge than another dog. But in his case, it is mainly to do with one, a very traumatic puppyhood, and two, a medical condition. So it's not entirely the fact that his anxiety is not improving. His anxiety is 100 times better than it was. He gets better and better every day. But will he ever be a truly calm and relaxed dog? I doubt it. There's just a lot for him to unpack. So the video clip that I did pick was another one of Marshall. This one's very short, but it best encapsulated his progress. So that is Marshall on a duck boat in Boston with, I believe, 7 other dogs and about 12 people on the duck boat. That was at the end of 2 days of being in Boston, surrounded by strange people, strange things. He'd never been to a city before, posing professionally for pictures for 2 days. I wish I had a video of him at his most relaxed, which was he passed out and took a nap in the middle of Newbury Street in Boston. Just stretched out on the sidewalk and took a nice little nap. I got pictures of it, but I did not get any videos of it. But he came a long way. When he first came to us, he didn't like people getting near him. He didn't like people trying to touch him. He didn't settle at all. He was very wound up. But a few months into training, that is the Marshall that exists today. And I'm sure his owners would tell you the same, considering I get at least weekly, if not daily, pictures of him napping in various positions, doing various things like snuggling kids, being out at a apple orchard, on a fire truck, all sorts of different things. So yeah, dogs can overcome their anxiety. Every dog is different though, so the journey to get there is a little bit different. But that's it. Those are my 5 myths that I wanted to bust for you today. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments. If you are watching on the replay, again, go ahead, leave those in the comments, and I will answer them as I get to them. And don't forget to check out that link for our version of Dr. Karen Overall's protocol for relaxation. If you're all curious what it looks like to work with a dog by doing a warm up, ramp up, cool down. All right. Have a good rest of your day, everybody, and I will see you all later. Give your pets some love for me.